What's up, everyone? We have the results of our Week 2 Safety Suite competition as well as Memphis' nominations, which came with a very controversial nomination speech. So welcome to your live feed update. So Christmas has won the second week of the Safety Suite competition and she has decided to save Ian as her +1. And as we know from yesterday, guys, Memphis' main target was going to be Ian. So this has thrown up a lot of kerfuffle in the house with people going into chaos at the fact that Christmas saved Ian. Nobody really expected it and Memphis was pretty annoyed and he was expressing that concern to Cody and Tyler and a few others, and everyone was just shocked that Christmas had decided to save Ian because we haven't really seen Christmas and Ian hang out that much, so it's came out of the blue, I guess, to quite a few of us and to the people in the house as well that's happened. But that's the result of the Week 2 Safety Suite competition. Christmas won and she saved Ian as her +1. Memphis has made his nominations and he has gone for David and Nicole Anthony. Obviously his plans were thrown into the gutter when Ian gained safety, which is why these are totally his backup nominations. However, the target has switched onto David and he has become the target for the week that he wants to see out of the house, and things seem to have turned a little bit nasty after putting David on slop in the hopes that he would basically react in some sort of way, shape or form that would put a target on his back. So that was quite sort of cruel in the way he did that. And then he went on to do the nominations and sort of basically express that to him full on, and apparently he laid into him quite a lot and was quite mean to him. We will obviously see the nomination speech on Sunday, but until then, that's all we know. We know that it's been very, very controversial because people have been discussing it with people, you know, I think Dave Vaughn and Bailey have both said that they want to try and save David with the power of veto if they were to get it, and people have just thought, you know, like people have expressed their opinions in the house that the way Memphis addressed David in his nomination speech is a bit controversial due to the fact of the climate of the world currently, just outside of the Big Brother house. So it seems as though he's ruffled a few feathers and definitely people are starting to turn on each other. That side of the house doesn't seem as solid as it used to be. But bearing in mind we've only been in the house just over a week now, but the cogs start to be turning and the people on that side of the house are beginning to turn on each other. The immediate reactions of the nomination ceremony included Kevin telling Nicole Anthony that she is the pawn and totally reassuring her that she is not going home this week. And then David expressed his concern to Tyler as well as Dave Vaughn that he was a bit annoyed of the way that Memphis addressed him in the nomination ceremony. Like, he understood and he knew that the nomination was coming, but he just didn't like his reasonings or the way he addressed him, which is totally fair. And I think again, it's just shown that that side of the house is starting to get cracks and the structure is slowly breaking down. Up in the HOH room, Memphis has expressed to Janelle and Kesa that he doesn't really care which of the nominees go home. Further in the night, we see him sort of express that he definitely has a favour or favoured sort of person he would rather go home. But as of that point, he expressed he didn't care who went home. So Janelle swooped in and said this is the perfect opportunity to backdoor Nicole Franzel. Now, I can imagine a lot of you are cheering right now at hearing that fact, but I don't know if it's going to go through. Memphis didn't seem to be on board with it. I think Janelle basically pitched it as a perfect opportunity to take someone off the block if she was to win the veto, and then Memphis to place Nicole Franzel up there and they'd have the votes to just knock her out, because nobody's really going to vote out David or Nicole Anthony over Nicole Franzel, because obviously she is 10 times more the threat because she has won the game. And also it looks great on your game resume if you were a part of taking Nicole Franzel out, so that was definitely pitched to Memphis, but he didn't seem to be on board with it. Janelle and Kesa did seize this opportunity to try and pitch an alliance to Memphis in which they could start to make some sort of big group on their side of the house. However, Memphis did express his hesitancy in forming into a big group because he feels it's very, very risky and he just doesn't like the idea of it because it's hard to trust people when you're in a big group. He likes those one-to-one connections or those smaller sort of groups in which they can relay information on a much easier basis. Yet on the other side of the house, he's pitched a massive group, so I think he was straight up lying to Janelle and Kesa there, and that really shows his true colours. And it's going to be interesting to see where he goes and, you know, how he's not wanting to nominate Janelle and Kesa, but he's not telling them all the information. So it's very sort of dodgy ground that he's on with them, so we'll see where that goes as the week goes on. David was very upset after being nominated with the reasonings for what Memphis gave, and Christmas was basically consoling him, and Bailey reassured him that they would not allow, or people in the house would not allow the mob mentality to continue. They'd shut that down if it was to continue. And as a result, Bailey has said that if she was to win the veto, she would definitely use it on David, and that sort of made him feel a little bit more reassured. But as we know, David is definitely the target at this point, with Nicole Anthony being the pawn. But this is Big Brother. Expect the unexpected, and the pawn can often go home in Big Brother history. Kevin was speaking to Dave Vaughn, and he was expressing the fact that Janelle has been pushing the fact that, I know it's a lot of he said, she said, but Janelle was pushing the fact that Cody, David, Nicole Franzel, Tyler, plus one other person are some sort of big alliance, but we don't know, or Janelle doesn't know who that one other person is. And Kevin's basically sort of just going around the house continuing to plant seeds about Janelle. I am not really a massive fan of his style of gameplay. I think it's very weaselly, and I don't really respect it very much because of the fact that people were going out on a limb last week to save him, and he basically kept going around telling everyone, I'm going to save you, I'm going to save you, I'm going to save you. And yeah, it works because it'll keep you in the house, but everyone will see through your gameplay, and I think he's sealed his fate already. That type of gameplay never gets jury votes in the end, so I think it's fair enough to say. I mean, I could be totally wrong here, but I mean, like, I just don't think Kevin is the type of person that's going to win an all-star game, or his gameplay isn't going to allow him to win an all-star game, because, I mean, as a personality, I think he's fantastic, like, great entertainment, but when it comes to gameplay, I'd say it's pretty substandard, so I'm not a massive fan of that. But you know what, he's just going to seal his own fate if he continues to do this to people, because he's acting all nice to someone's face, and then being the total opposite behind their back. And I know this is a Big Brother house, and a lot of people do that, but at the same time, I feel like Kevin's doing that on hyperdrive. So I'm not a massive fan of that gameplay, and I think it's going to come bite him very, very soon, or sooner rather than later. With David and Nicole Anthony being from the same season, from Big Brother 21, they basically expressed how they would like both of each other to make it out of this week alive. And they sort of talked about the week from last year, where Cliff nominated Jack and Jackson, and both Jack and Jackson managed to make it out alive. So they think that they want to do the same thing and manage to get out of there, and it's definitely feasible and it's possible. And I think they're going to be trying everything that they can to ensure that both of them have safety and someone else heads out the door this week. Danny and Davon were expressing how they feel it's a bit strange that Janelle thinks she can get really, really far in this season with only being allied with Kesa and Memphis. And also, we know from the outside that she's actually not that close with Memphis, or Memphis isn't that close with her. So she's really only tight with Kesa. So they've sort of got a bad read there, but at the same time, it does seem a bit strange that Janelle doesn't have that many people, but it's because she's a massive target. People don't really want to align themselves with the big target, because then they can put a big target on themselves. And at the same time, they also expressed the fact that they believe Bailey had actually gave Janelle a call pre-season, rang her up and said, would you like to work with me? So they think that Bailey could actually be relaying information to Janelle, but Davon sort of intercepted and said, I trust Bailey full on. It doesn't matter if she's doing that. I still trust her, and even if it was true, she's still good in my books. Even though Janelle and Kesa don't seem to be the target this week, Danny and Davon also did express the fact that if Janelle is out of the game, they feel Kesa will be really, really good to work with, and they can rope him into some sort of alliance with them. But first, they need to just act like the door is still open for Janelle while she's in the game, because they don't want to seal their own fate by shutting her down. So at the same time, as much as they want to work with Kesa, they don't really want to do it until Janelle leaves. But as a result, they need to act like they are cool with Janelle, and she's cool with them. Just all around cool, just coolness, and act all smooth around her, so she doesn't get any hint that they want her out. Whilst David is actively said to be the target in the house, Danny has said that if the noms stay the same, she believes Nicole Anthony will be heading home, and I don't know about that. I feel like it's all down to the veto competition. But as Danny says, if the nominations do stay the same, I don't imagine Nicole leaving. It just seems a bit random. I mean, I feel like majority of people in the house feel like this is probably a better opportunity to take out David, because David is definitely more of a threat than Nicole Anthony. Although David didn't make it far in the game, he shows a hell of a lot more strategy potential, I think, than Nicole Anthony. So I feel like people will be targeting David over Nicole Anthony, but you never know. As we say, it's Big Brother. I mean, nobody really expected Keisha to go home in the first week. I think they did after the nominations happened, but nobody would have said going into this season, yes, Keisha will be the first boot. Expect the unexpected, guys. We've seen a lot last week of Nicole Anthony and Janelle chatting with each other, but Nicole A has said to Davon that she believes Janelle could be playing her, and she doesn't know if it's true or not, and she's basically, our emotions are running high quite now. Obviously, when you're on the block, I feel like the paranoia ramps up from 0 to 100 extremely fast, or maybe even from a low number, because it's always up there when you're in the Big Brother house. The paranoia there's always a certain level of it, and as a result, she basically doesn't know if she can trust Janelle or not. But if we look at things on the flip side and go to the HOH room, we've seen Memphis chatting to Janelle, basically saying he doesn't really mind if David goes home this week, because if he does, he can rope in Nicole A as a close ally and build trust with her. So actively, we can see that Memphis actually does want to work with Nicole A, and that'll probably reassure Janelle and Nicole Anthony's relationship if Nicole Anthony gets wind of that, because then they'll know they could potentially be a 3 that work together, maybe alongside Kesa, making a 4. But as a result, I think as this week goes on, the paranoia is going to ramp up for Nicole Anthony, but I think she'll suddenly come to some sort of realisation that Janelle actually does have her back over David. So Memphis has told Christmas, Cody and Nicole Franzel that Janelle thinks that Cody, Nicole Franzel, Tyler and David are working together, and yes, that was very, very hard to remember all those names, but I did it, so congratulations me. But yes, we'll continue into that. That's basically Memphis Memphis totally selling out all the conversations he's had with Janelle that evening. I think Janelle thinks she's got this massive sort of trust fund that's going in with Memphis, but Memphis is basically just, you know, everything goes into him and it goes out the other end to this side of the house. So I think Janelle needs to realise that Memphis actually doesn't have her back fully. And Nicole Anthony did actually say that to Janelle the other day. She basically straight up said Memphis really isn't to be trusted. He's working with Cody, he's working with Tyler, and you shouldn't really trust anything you say to him, or don't say anything too drastic that could go to that side of the house and blow up your own game. So Janelle definitely needs to stay reserved there with what she tells him, and she needs to realise that Memphis doesn't really have her back. Another moment of Janelle being sold out by Memphis was Memphis telling Cody that Janelle thinks, Janelle and Kesa actually, so Kesa got sold out slightly, was Janelle and Kesa saying that they think Nicole Franzel is masterminding the whole situation. So obviously Cody is very, very tight with Nicole Franzel, so if that news gets out to her, it's just going to stoke the fire even more with Nicole Franzel, because Nicole Franzel is hell bent on getting Janelle out already. She basically thinks she's gunning for her. They are both low key. There's like a slow war that's brewing between them, and it's just going to go up and up and up until they clash, and then obviously someone's going to win, but whoever goes out first. But whoever goes out first is going to feel really bad, and the person who stays in the house is going to feel amazing at the fact that they lasted longer than the other. But I think that's definitely a fight waiting to happen, and if Cody relays that information to Nicole Franzel, it's just going to stoke the fire even more. After that conversation, Cody seemed to be very perturbed, and as a result he is pushing to get rid of Janelle or Kesa this week, whether it be a backdoor plan or just a replacement nominee plan. He wants one of them out, and he feels like this is the perfect opportunity to do so. And as a result, he has basically said that Kesa would be the first person to go between them. He thinks that he should be the first out of the two to go, with Memphis agreeing. And if we turn things on the flippity-flip, if we go Michael Scott on this, Danny and Tyler believe that Janelle should be the first to go. So that's definitely, again, it's a mutiny within that alliance. If this alliance don't start to agree with each other on things, it's just going to blow up, because if you've got half the alliance wanting one thing and half the alliance wanting the other, it ain't going to work well, because as an alliance you've got to be a unit and you've all got to want the same decision, or it's going to create animosity between the alliance, and eventually things will go kaboom. That is all of your game updates for today, folks. Tune in to the live feeds today for a very exciting day. I've heard it's the veto ceremony from a few house guests very, very late on in the evening, so I'm excited, and I'm quite intrigued why they've basically done the safety suite, the nomination, and the veto 3 days on the trot. It's very exciting, and it's definitely going to be a feed today that we don't want to miss out on. So I'll be here, though, obviously on my YouTube channel, doing updates every single day of the season. So if you are new here and you've really enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll say my usual spiel. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, do all of that stuff. And until your next live feed update, I've been your host, Tom Vasey. Good night.